unless someone has an issue. If not, I'll accept the recommendation. Approval? Yes. Sure.
I would move to approve the minutes of Thursday, May 16th without alteration. And I won't comment on the next set, that's because I'm here for that meeting. I was trying to read it quickly enough, but I could not do that. So I will move to approve the meeting minutes of Thursday, May 16th.
I'll second that.
You just said, just the May 16th, you're moving?
Yes.
Yes.
Made and seconded. Any other comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Chair votes aye. July 6th. Anybody? Seems you were there this time, Michelle. You made a motion. Huh? Okay.
I'll second.
You comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And finally, it's the two. It's interesting how we looked at 3 projects and haven't seen any action on any of them. Don and I have been talking about that.
We've been talking about
Yeah,
that.
what do you think? The market?
I don't know, on Popeyes, we're not sure whether or not there's issues with the land transfer and whether or not they've sorted that out, or whether or not they've had, delays in getting the state sign off on from the traffic authority, state traffic authority. Although we understand, I think we heard a month ago that they've been there. Or whether it's financial, but whether they've decided they didn't want the franchise there. But we haven't heard boo from them. And we think that on Republic, they were just waiting for the season to end. Where they weren't using the patio at all and they could start.
They're waiting for building permits.
They haven't come in.
I think there was an application.
Was there an application?
And they were, building department requested more details on
Okay.
it, so it's,
And you're correct.
but they
That
haven't.
was recent information.
And then the Bester Lane one, from what I've heard, and I don't know if it's fully true, but I don't think the sale went through. So, whether that one will ever see the light of day, I don't.
But yeah, it was sort of, they were all gun ho to go.
Forgery.
Thought they had the sale.
We're particularly surprised
That kind of
with
money.
Popeyes.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We got a lot of questions about that one.
Well, okay. Item new business, we have discussion of our policies and procedures. And,
We have on the 3rd.
one more minute.
July 20th,
I'm sorry. Where's that one?
which I will move approval of as written.
July 6th. July 6th?
July 20th is the remaining.
C.
This one says July 6th. Yeah.
We have July 6th and then July 20th with the special
sorry.
meeting.
Okay. Twice in July, that's.
That's when we were,
That was for Bester
that was
Lane.
for Bester Lane.
Doesn't matter whether we approve this or not, then. Therefore, I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Approve.
Moved by Mark, seconded by Neil. All those in favor?
Aye.
Votes aye. Okay. I think it's, hopefully we'll spend a little bit more time looking at these minutes and they're more current in our minds. Well, if we've done, had some significant involvement. This is for you. We're not going to rush through these all the time.
Yeah.
But, all right, so the next on new business, we have 2 drafts in front of us. And Justin, I would ask you to go through them. And with the introduction, however, there are 2 documents. Is this to replace everything else that we've done in the past that's been circulated?
Correct.
Okay.
This is to put everything together in an easy, readable package.
Okay.
Part of what you'll probably remember from previous meetings is we've discussed how design review board is often approached by applicants as an afterthought. This is to gear it more towards a front-loaded aspect where people can actually spend some time, focus on the design review elements before they get to a place where they're pushing to get the planning and zoning approval, so they have to rush through this phase. So John has actually put these together, so I don't know, John, if you want to,
And behind this is all the actual regulations that are in the zoning ordinance as we go. And the idea is that when someone comes in, we would give them a package, along with the application, what the design, what the purpose of the board is, and then the suggested procedures and reviews that we went through. And the purpose and overview basically is a sort of a summary of who you are and the guiding points that you would utilize in reviewing any applications. And a particularly call out that I know has bothered all of you as long as I've been involved, that there be a schedule followed that allowed this board sufficient time to properly do its review without feeling rushed.
Mhm.
And that was would be understood from the beginning, and that really falls on both the applicant and Justin and myself in terms of scheduling when the applicant comes to see you, and it doesn't, so if you want to do more than one review, we haven't put the TPZ right after that so that you're feeling rushed and whatnot. So we will lay out that schedule depending on how they come in. And then this is the sort of taking comments that you all sent to me in terms of the procedures and guidelines, taking some of the stuff out of the existing regulations, and comments that you all made, and tried to tighten it all up so there wasn't a lot of duplication, and to make it fairly clear that it either was it could be anything from a one-step to a three-step process. And I know there has been some agita about that, but there's a way for an applicant to get a preliminary design review mainly on larger developments, big new developments or major renovations, where they would come in and meet with you in very conceptual terms, where you could begin to give feedback to them before they went out and spent a fair amount of money on detailed designs. And I know that Neil has always been a little reluctant to be their designer. And I had that in mind, but I think at the same time, it would be, if a big development like, what's his name comes back in on Gab Road, you want to bite at that apple earlier than later, so that you would have that conversation. And then we would have and I called that a preliminary design review. And then we would have or actually I called that an advisory conceptual review. And then we would have the preliminary design review, which everyone would do, which is a more formal review, depending on no matter what size. Either be the second time on a big project or the first time on a more medium project, where you would apply your standards and whatnot. We would not require as detailed information for that, unless at the time you did that review, you decided you wanted more, and you could tell them you wanted more. And then we would move to the final design, which has all the really final details on site design, landscaping, building architecture, signage, and everything. And you could decide in the preliminary that you didn't need it, and you could send a recommendation on to the TPC, or you wanted more. And we'd build that all into a schedule. And then in terms of what you would utilize to apply it, it's basically the stuff that's in the ordinance and stuff you've been doing all along. In terms of context, scale, massing, materials, and pedestrian accommodations. And then in terms of the requirements, there's 4 pages of them in the zoning ordinances, but, site design, and everything is exterior.
It doesn't say that.
Does not, but it would seem to me that if you had some common sense, you could figure it out in terms of site design, building, landscaping, site lining, site structures, architectural design, and signage. If you want, and I have no pride or authors here, so.
Yeah, no, that's something for us to discuss, because then we get architects, and when these companies come in, the first thing they do is they take you inside and show you everything it's gonna look like. Like, that's nice, but give us just 5 minutes, because that's not what we're looking at.
Right.
So I want to maybe we can do that from the table. Just tell them. We don't have to put it in writing, it's just exterior. Thank you. I think you're correct. You gotta go with it.
Those are good things. No, we'll get it.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the general philosophy, you know, and what I did and what I tried to do. Happy to go through it line by line, however you want to do it.
Well, I think it would be helpful to hear what people have in terms
Yeah,
of questions or additions, rather than ride my lines.
I agree.
Do that.
Just
Happy to go.
Please,
Okay.
take the lead.
Thank you. Justin and John, this is great. I felt like we haven't seen a project yet that we didn't want to see a lot of these details, even kind of the smaller ones. So the detailed list of submissions in the final design review that you have listed, I think we need those at the initial or not wait till forcing them to have a second meeting to get those things to us. I think we're gonna want to see a lot of those things in an initial review. Because we always have.
Mhm.
Probably, okay, and maybe there is a difference between the small projects and the big projects, but to date, we've always wanted that. So then my thinking was, well, if we really want those things in the what you call the preliminary design review, then we really need to see them in a conceptual meeting before that. If they're gonna start spending money on those details, then I feel like we have to make it mandatory that we have this advisory conceptual review. I am kind of being a glutton for punishment here, makes more meetings for us. I mean, there might be a very few cases where you don't need that. But I kind of think in general, they should come in for that initial meeting. It's not a lot of prep for them. It's more on us to have another meeting. And then there's really a hope we could be done at the next meeting, I think, maybe, and not need the third one. If they skip the conceptual and the way it stands now, come in for the preliminary and don't bring us all the details, we're going to want them back for another one. There's going to be 2 meetings, I predict in most cases. So that's why I felt it should be a mandatory conceptual. And then really outline what we want them to bring on the initial one. And maybe it's not 100% of the details, but it covers all the topics. And then if we need the third one, we need the third one. So that was kind of the big picture that I was looking at.
You want to get some sounding on that from speak before we go on to the next item? Any thoughts? Any thoughts on what?
I particularly like the idea of an early meeting that sets the framework for what, and I guess I'm reflecting back to some of the meetings we've had, and questions have been asked by all of us, you know, what's the concept here? What's the plan? What's your overall idea for how this is going to fit into our community? And we rarely get a response to that. We get this sort of deadpan, well, I thought we were just here to talk about, you know,
Color of brick.
the color of brick and stuff like that. I don't know how to push that forward, but in the same, you know, the same idea, the same realm that you're talking about. I think it's important for everybody, the applicant and us, to have a clear idea of what their intent is. And intent, a little hard to define. I think we know what we're looking for, but we need more of that, I think. So that meeting would be essential for that. And no, we don't want them to go ahead and spend a lot of extra money and experts and things like that. But once you put an architect on, you know, involved, they bring an architect or a planner or a site planner to a meeting, and they've made a commitment to doing a project. We want to know what's behind their thinking, you know, doing that. If it's all just to make some money, that's fine. They can tell us that. But
Design, that's not.
it's not a, well, that may be, yeah. But, you're right, David. I mean, framed within the context of a design.
Mhm.
And a design has to have something
lot
of
to do with it.
substance
That's
behind
right.
it. So that's, I just to kind of add to that, I like the idea of making that important. I mean, sure, there might be a little project, but even that little project with the facade on the Wester Lane, we didn't get a clear idea of what they wanted, you know?
They didn't have a clear.
They didn't have a clear
idea.
idea, and that's an indication. Wow, we gotta do something.
I would support that too. It should be mandatory because that's really where we make our self known. We all are professionals of different variety. We live in town. We have a sense of what we've seen, what we hopefully could want to see in how development takes place. That takes place at the conceptual level. And from the standpoint of the national discussion about how long it takes to get anything done, government regulations and blah, 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 this, I think, would speed up the process. If we get a chance to really have it out with them in the beginning, you know, when they come in, either they've listened or they haven't, and it'll be pretty obvious. You make minor adjustments. We have to be prepared maybe to design a little bit at the table though, at this conceptual piece. We have to be a little bit flexible, I think, on that, because that's where you're putting your input. So I think that probably is probably not as important, if not more important, than the final.
It might not actually, it might be easier at that point to not design at the table because we're only talking concepts
That's true.
and relating what they should be looking at in
Right.
general.
No, that's what I mean.
We end up designing when they've already designed something and say, no, put it over here, don't put it over here. But at this point, they haven't put it anywhere.
Yeah.
They're, what criteria should they be using, that kind of thing. So I think it helps us in not designing to see it earlier.
Well,
to talk
in
earlier.
the largest, the broadest sense would be having it more input there at a meeting on a conceptual level. So did you want to go on to another item? Do you have something else?
Oh, well, just,
Michelle, do you
just,
have anything to say?
yeah.
Oh, you got something?
Oh, is it my turn?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, to talk about that particular part of the discussion.
Which particular part?
well,
Well,
just react to what I
conceptual
said and then we
review.
can go on to other topics. Is that the
Oh,
idea?
okay, well, there's sort of a little overlap here, which I wanted to clarify too. What I have done is I have read this document, which I think is excellent. The only thing that I have done is reading it for the first time. I tried to focus in on things. If I were an applicant, would I truly understand what you want me to get? And
Thank you.
focus on that to make it as concrete as we could possibly do. So I do have, that's what these language things are. The 2 points that I have questions about is number one, and many towns do this, I've seen this so many times before, that we talk about attention to detail in accordance with the aspirations outlined in the Bloomfield Plan of Conservation and Development. It's an important resource for anybody who wants to come in with an application to have looked at that, to know that it's probably not likely that the town is going to love something that it's going to hate. That's a help. However, this is not a policy document. The plan of development is not a policy document. It's really a wish list. Some plans of development are very pointed in that regard. Others are just pipe dreams. So to point that out as looking at some of the comments that you read in our plan of development, some of which are excellent, some which remind you that, wow, you wonder where they came up with that stuff, right? So I think it's fine to make reference to it, but in a way that a person wouldn't feel that that's what we're directing them to, because we don't have the ability to do that, and the plan of development has no compliance authority. Right, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay, so refer to it, but not have them depend on it, because they might zone in on something in there and say, well, it says in there that this is one of the things you're looking for, that. And then when you just mentioned, John, a few paragraphs back that looking at what a major development is can really swing the way you're going to be looking at it. We need to have somewhere where we address what major is: square footage, location, town center, multi-story, something that we've never approved before, a new concept. But so we need to get into that, and it doesn't have to be real detailed, but just, mention that. And then The other thing that I have a question about, and municipalities get involved in this too, our very own council did one night, and I thought, when you talk about a policy with regard to its differentiation to a guideline, when you talk about an ordinance and then refer to it as a guideline, which is what I heard several people on council do, no can do. So it's sort of like, you have to be careful how you use the term guideline. And in a couple of places here, I just put design review board policy that you have already outlined here. So just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding about, well, maybe there's leeway whether you can do this or not. We want to reserve for ourselves as much pointedness with regard to the importance of what we're asking the applicant for as we can. And we don't want to be faced with the situation, they're saying, well, you said it's a guideline, it means I don't have to really do it, you know? So it's a sort of like a fuzzy area, but I think it's important with regard to how you state it.
But those guidelines are in the zoning ordinance.
Yes,
So
So-
that's official.
yes. The other thing that comes up here, and I have had experience with this both in county government, city government. When you get into a situation where you are talking about being interested in saving an applicant money, and that can be a real trap too, because that's not why we're here. We're here to provide the best, most efficient review that we can give and the efficient use of resources. And that's the term that I use, resources rather than cost. Because I have heard legal interpretations saying that it's really not our business how much it costs somebody to do something, because they're gonna have enough reasons that they don't want to do those things because they have a budget, and we understand
I'm
that.
not looking at their pro forma.
That is correct. So, you know, we can have sensitivity to what they think their parameters are, because most developers are very open and saying, hey, this is my budget and this is what I have, and if I can't do this here, I'll go do it somewhere else. You know, you're confronted with that. So I would be very careful with regard to thinking that it's our responsibility to save our applicant money. And the way you can really deal with that is simply not to mention it. Say that we are interested in providing efficient, timely review. We are interested in avoiding overlaps whenever we can, and the wise use of everyone's resource, whether it be time or not. And I really wouldn't get into cost. And then, this is, I want to comment on something that David said before. Our questions that we ask an applicant on receipt, and this goes to a very preliminary stage in trying to understand what the applicant wants from us. Upon application, if our questions aren't necessarily pointed or are pointed, sometimes it's a proposal that's so vague that we don't really get what they want to do. And an example of that would have been Republic. Because, you know, they all just started talking at once, and one's talking about this color, and now it's talking about, no, this is the blah, blah, blah. So we had to really thread through that. And that was very difficult. And I thought it was difficult anyway, because they were not entirely agreeing among themselves. So that's the whole preliminary thing. The way I see the preliminary meeting, and it's covered in application review procedure, so we'll get to that, is I don't see 3 meetings, I see 2. And the first meeting I see is this committee. You and you, because you are the experts with regard to that application procedure. And if you feel that there's not enough information brought forward at that point to be real or to meet what you consider to be the preliminary requirement, I don't think we should be sitting in on that. I think we should be sitting on the next meeting and the final meeting. I trust both of you to make the call to say whether or not they have met your requirement. You're the planning director, you're an urban planner, so you know those ordinances better than we do. I'm only speaking for myself, not for anybody else.
Well,
So-
let's have it, you know,
So,
we should either support you or not.
yes, so I wouldn't see that first meeting, I see the first meeting as the gatekeeper. And saying, well, you know, or do you people just want to sit here and beat ideas around? Maybe that's what they want to do. Sometimes that is what they want to do. But you guys can handle that better than we can too. You've seen it all and heard it all. So I would put that in there.
So you're going for 2 meetings rather than.
Yes,
I can see that.
No, go for 3 meetings, but the first meeting is yours.
Staff meeting, right?
Yes,
Okay,
It's
it
like
seems
the-
to me you're
no,
adding
no, no.
another meeting.
no, there's 3 in here,
Okay.
so, but we just get 2.
Oh, okay.
They do
yeah,
the
well,
preliminary.
Yeah, we need to hear the rest.
Yep.
Here, go ahead.
So, maybe you want to talk about that when we get in here? I don't know.
Well, we were talking about it in this context of Mark proposing that the advisory conceptual review be a mandatory review, which I agree. And I sense that maybe you're taking that one out and putting that back on staff. And if they're gonna put it on staff, they don't need us.
Okay, well, no, from the standpoint of
That's what we bring to the table.
what these 2 would be doing is really speaking to any confusion, need for information that that applicant has, and whether or not they even have a concept that's ready to come forward. Because oftentimes applicants aren't ready to come forward. They think they are, but they're not. So completeness of concept, completeness of idea of how they wish to proceed. You guys say, sounds like a go. You're looking at general zoning requirements, code requirements, whatever, and it's looking good. If you're coming forward with what you have told us thus far, then do it.
It's like, I would interpret that, David, to be like an application review, which, you know, like the building department does now when someone files for a building permit, everything. And if I could just build off that for a minute, I just want to understand where Mark's coming from to some detail.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for this.
No, but I'm sure you do. But the list that you want to put up front has everything to scale, which suggests to me that that's pretty detailed. If that's what you
Yes.
want, fine. And that's what we would do up front, saying, look, you can't come into, and we would make sure it is to scale until you're where you want it. But if that's what you're really looking for, I don't have any problem with it, but I just want to make sure I understand that's what you want.
I think we do, because if we do have that mandatory conceptual review, then I think it's okay to ask for things at scale for the
Okay.
next one.
Let me butt in and ask this question. From the standpoint of our relationship with TPZ, where do you see us fitting into the who gets the first application? If it goes to TPZ, there's a certain requirement they have to meet certain scale and other issues anyway.
Correct.
Correct.
So that would fit in with what Mark's saying. Otherwise, not having them come in totally without anything in hand and asking us what should we do here?
Right.
They have to have gone into the TPZ first. And I think that's something that needs to be discussed throughout this, our relationship to the TPZ, because it's not in here.
I think that the difference, and I'm agreeing with the information you're asked for, I guess it's the point at which you can relatively ask for that. Because I've been in preliminary meetings where somebody brings a sketch in on the back of a part of a 2x4, because
We don't
people are
accept
saying,
that.
well, we want to do this, but we're not really sure we're going to do it. We're not sure we have the money, and we're not sure it'll fly. So we're just trying to get some general guidance. And nobody has an A2 survey at that point, or a site plan, or dimensions, or scale. Nobody has that. Because they're not going to spend until they know which way they're going. If you want to talk about costs.
But
So
that
I
might
think
be
that's,
fine.
that's the role that staff plays. If someone's coming with an idea, I haven't got it resolved yet, what do you think? No, that's one thing. That's maybe what it's not us.
That's
yeah,
why
not us.
a preliminary thing with regard to guidance, or you saying to them, for example, well, you can't give me a site plan that looks like that because that's not a site plan, but here's what a site plan looks like. It's what Mark wants. So, and what you already have outlined here. So do you want to move forward with this or not? Sometimes these people say, oh, holy cow, I didn't know I was going to have to do all that,
Right.
especially if they're not real professional people, people who have a family business or whatever, and nothing has improved on the site since the year 2 or whatever. So yes, you do want that information, but asking for that in a preliminary meeting, I don't think you're going to get it.
So we've come to a sense of anything that's really fishing trip goes to staff. If they're gone to the TPZ, they're making an application where they have to submit certain things under the rules, then it can come as our preliminary meeting.
Because he knows that anyway, and
Is
he
that
knows what
what-
the
is that how
TPC
you
will be
relate?
looking
Well,
for.
right.
Anyway,
Wouldn't
you're
it
parallel.
always come to us first before TPZ?
No, I don't think so. I never had that impression.
Shouldn't it?
at what stage? No one's reviewed it and you don't know what you're looking at. Then you get into a
It'll come here
situation
first, right?
where you're looking.
Yeah, Dave, it's gonna come here first, because, first of all, TPZ works on a state statute clock. So once something goes into TPZ, they have to, particularly if a public hearing is required, that public hearing has to be held within a certain amount of days, and within the closing of that public hearing, the TPZ has to act. So you don't wanna get in the middle of that.
No,
So our sense is that it's gonna come here first, but to your point, having them meet the more stringent, that may not be the right word, but the more detailed requirements prepares them to go to the TPZ. Because at some point, they're gonna need that information for the TPZ, so instead of, they're just gonna, they have to prepare it a little earlier than they anticipate, but if they're walking in the door here to do something, unless it's a very preliminary, we have this thought, we'd like to do this on this land, what do you think? Meeting, which we have regularly,
Yeah, that's a step.
then I think, it's no extra burden on them in terms of what they're gonna have to prepare for TBZ, but we're now saying we need that for the DRB. And then you can use the same information, maybe modified by the DRB,
However
to
it
go to
comes
the
out.
TBZ.
However it comes out, my goal is twofold. One is to not overburden the process. And the other is to make TPZ aware of and supportive of and grateful for the input that they're getting.
So
So
it makes
then we
sense
make
for
that
us to
work.
go first. Makes sense for us to go first. So everything we just said right there is that final paragraph on the purpose and overview. I think that the intent behind this is great, but it's sort of like a plea of how we, it's like a request. I think that needs to be rewritten so that it spells out what you're saying. So in other words, the applicant comes in and you two guys, based on how the project, a lot of criteria, you've got all the experience and you're gonna immediately say, this falls into this kind of category, so here's the schedule we see for you.
Right.
Now, DRB might be 2 or 3 meetings in that schedule, so you might have alternate, and same thing with TPZ, right? You might end up going back to, but you would, at that point, could lay out a schedule for them,
Right.
and we all know what that schedule is.
I agree entirely.
And they're gonna
because-
da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So that whole last paragraph should say something like that, that you guys are in control of that, you're gonna do that. But that also plays into what you were saying, Michelle, about these guys being a gatekeeper of
Yep.
that initial meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think that should turn into an extra meeting, and it could easily, I think, if you get a really organized group that's coming in, they say, we want to build a, 20-story thing over here. And you say, well, here's the process and here's how it goes. And you got to come to this mandatory conceptual DRB meeting. Okay. But you got to come to us first to see if you're ready to go to that meeting. I don't see that as a step. I mean, I think you can let them come. If they get a good enough explanation of what our conceptual meeting is, I don't think that extra step has to be in there of these guys saying, oh, you're not ready to come to the conceptual meeting. That's a really hard.
It's true, but my response to that is that I think most applicants we've dealt with don't look at meeting with the staff the same as going before a board or commission.
Agreed.
And that we have on almost any medium and above development, even on some minors, the applicant asks to meet, and we have a system here in town where they sit down with not only Justin and myself, but with the town engineer, the public works director, the wetlands agent, where we're all there at once to review what they're proposing and they're getting guidance from all of us in terms of what we think they need to do to be ready to come before the boards and commissions. And, in the cases where they're going to be a design review situation, that would just be an added element that would be in that meeting. And then there can be side meetings. Sometimes they just meet with the wetlands agent going forward if there are detailed things they have to do there. Sometimes they just meet with Justin and myself.
So that's already happening.
That's already happened.
But I'm hearing one more time as Michelle is asking for, that, okay, now they've prepared their documents or whatever they have for this conceptual meeting with us. And
That's
it
not
sounded to me like you
proposed.
wanted to filter that,
No.
whether they're really ready to come to us.
No, as a matter of
Okay,
fact, I do agree with you about that last paragraph, because my comment here, who will direct this and what's the language?
Yeah.
Because that is a big, important
Yeah,
step.
a great intent
It's going
there,
to set that.
but you can lock that down with the information we're talking about now.
So,
I just think that from the standpoint of what I'm proposing, a lot of these things, when it comes to applications, are judgment calls. Anybody who's done this ever knows that. And I trust both of these people who do that. That's why you're here. That's what you get your big bucks for.
Speaking of judgment calls, do you have the judgment or the courage to hold back an application that you don't think is ready to go to TPC?
We've done. that.
we've done it several
We've
times.
done it several times.
Okay, just, we gotta get that, because that then fits, that.
I mean, we're working, just as an aside, this doesn't need to go in the minutes. We're working with an applicant who's proposing tiny homes. And we've probably met with them now 4 times.
In
terms of-
single-family zones? Say no.
Well, this is an interesting
Wait, wait,
proposal.
wait,
We're now-
this isn't, this is-
See, there's proof there's no such thing as a small project. Right?
And we say, no, you need more, you're not ready, you ought to better look at this. No one around here is afraid to say no.
But conceivably, you can say, you come pretty far along. We think going to the design review board now before you enter the time frame of the TPC may be a good idea,
Mhm.
or not.
And I think there are, again, like you said, it's a judgment call. In certain large scale projects, I think there are times that we would want to do that. You know, we want to have some sort of overall design. Let's take a very big hypothetical. Wittenberry Mall, if there was ever a brand new development there, I would want that to come before you guys way before the clock starts.
There's a
on
great
planning and zoning.
example, as a matter of fact.
Because that's a huge project and it's gonna take a lot of time.
More than one
Coming
meeting.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, there's a study that's been funded, correct?
Well, that's.
What-
Well, that is not to say that this group and these professionals can't have a special meeting concept that can be woven into this. By their judgment, if they think
Okay.
something is important enough to have a discussion in a very preliminary way due to its scope and importance, which is what we were talking about before. How big is it? Where is it? You
I mean,
know,
our
and
position
follow.
is, we don't look at you as an obstacle, we look at you as a benefit.
Well, that's the image I'm trying to convey also to the TPC.
And that's gonna, I think some of that's gonna fall on us and it's gonna take some time and we're gonna get the chairman. There are a couple of members on there that I think already know that and see that. We can probably add that to our educational.
I was just gonna say
We're
the
gonna
same
be,
thing.
we're gonna have there's a variety of things we need to discuss with them. And so we're gonna have, once the new commission is formed, we're gonna have an educational session with them, on protocols and things of that type, but also we can talk about this and the
I'm
importance. of-
very happy that this is a recommending agency. We don't have any real power. But we came into existence because the TPC failed to do
Wasn't following
their,
their own regulations.
failed to evaluate their own, right? So, but we're not doing battle with the TPC now. We accept our role and want to be of service to them.
By you being the author of the schedule and putting us and TPZ in their boat, and everybody sees how it all works together.
On a spectrum.
And I think there's something that's always driven me a little bit crazy here that we're working to fix as we speak. We don't have a set deadline as of today where, take this group out of the picture. If you're going to TPZ for a special permit in industrial zone or something like that, we don't have, okay, you want to be on the November 16th agenda, the deadline is whatever it would be, October 26th or something. What my goal is we're currently updating our application forms, we're updating our application fees, and with that, we're going to include a schedule of, if you want to be on this meeting date, you have to submit by this date.
Right.
And there would be a subcategory of, if you want to submit to TPC by this date, but you're in an area regulated by this body as well, you got to submit earlier. here is your
To
date.
accommodate both.
Here's the track you're on.
Yeah.
Correct.
Here's the
Exactly.
track you're on.
Correct.
You're on.
And if you miss that date, you're on the next meeting.
So, okay, that's a good, but I'm trying to still see if there's any conflict between what you're offering as a major conceptual and what you were saying.
I
Do
don't,
they work
I
together?
don't think so, but I think a lot of it is gonna how we put it down in writing.
Right.
Okay,
Not only that, that's what I was about to propose. I think it's pivotal how you two see this work. Not only from the standpoint of responsibility, but the time frame and how it will mesh with any other meetings that are being proposed. I would want to give you the opportunity to really discuss that and hammer it out and hear what you want.
Well, I think the
To drive
sequence,
the
I think
process,
the
would you
sequence
agree?
you want,
Yeah,
the sequence you want,
Okay.
and then the other is when there's an inland wetland requirement, it goes there before it goes to TPZ.
Right.
So, and if, so if there's DRB, inland wetlands and TPZ, that's gonna be a different
Correct.
schedule, which we'll have to lay out. But what I'm sensing is that you want us to be gatekeepers. And then once we've done our gatekeeping, it comes to you for, probably I would call a preliminary meeting, not necessarily a conceptual meeting. And then, based on what you do at that meeting, there could be a second meeting. So that from your perspective, my sense is there's really only two meetings. And then, unless it's really, there's always gonna be a third meeting, obviously, and a fourth meeting, it's necessary. Applicant keeps responding to what you're doing. But in terms of the basic outline, there'd be the initial meeting with you folks after we've got them ready to come to you. And then there would be the second meeting where they have responded to the conversation they've had with you. And then beyond that, you would hopefully make your recommendation on the TPC.
And I will add, so I think just as there will be exceptions on the large scale side of projects, I think there will be exceptions on the small scale too. If someone's just putting up a freestanding sign, that's gonna be a much quicker, that's gonna be a one meeting for you guys.
and after the second meeting, there's nothing to stop us from saying, well, they presented this, but the TPC, we prefer to see this, and leave it at the TPC, make that determination, so there's no
Right.
reason for us to go over it again.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I keep sort of thinking about some dark ideas, such as, do developers come in and say, you're an advisory group. Design Review Board is an advisory group. Yes, we're required to sit with them, but
We haven't heard
care
that.
what they
We
say,
have not got that yet.
and we don't want to plug into the.
I mean, some of them I think are more appreciative than others, but I think that, some of the larger guys may take a little exception and say, who the hell are you and whatnot, but I
Yeah.
think I also don't think, and maybe we want to be a little more ambiguous in our stuff. I'm not sure that all of them really understand that you're just advisory. That, I think some of them may actually think, you got some clout here and TP's gonna listen to you. I also think we need to make, I think it's important that the TPC does listen to you and we need to reinforce that. I mean, that's where where the issue is,
I've spoken to a couple of members of the TPC, and we've got one member that's actually on our board here. And most everybody I've spoken to has been very favorable in terms of not only how
And
we've
you
been acting.
you
but
bring an
what-
expertise that none of them have.
Yeah.
And, I think that, I think that while it's not legally there, I think that my sense is, and I think we can reinforce this, that, to some degree, they look at you the same way they look at wetlands. Wetlands is in, here's what they're recommending, and we gotta stay in this, and the DRB is recommending this on the architecture and design and concepts and the compatibility, and, we're looking at whether they're looking at the use, you're looking at the physicality of it.
So let's play out another dark thought.
Well,
The
yeah.
developer comes in, right?
Yeah,
And we do our thing, and at the end, we are not happy, we don't like what they've done, okay? And they say, well, you're just advisory, we're gonna go to TPZ, and they go to TPZ, and TPZ reads our comments, and they respect them. And they say, we can't approve this because that, does the town get sued because we're advisory only? Does the developer say, you can't base your decision on what
No,
an
because-
advisory committee
because
says?
The regulations apply to them the same as you in terms of what's in the ordinance, so they can say, the DRB has said to us, and we happen to agree with them, that this does not meet these particular provisions of the regulations.
But our comments are not solely on regulations. Our comments are gonna
Well, we've
be,
got to be careful.
our comments are on
Yeah.
other things besides regulation. In fact, we've been avoiding, we don't talk about the regulations, you know, you have to have lighting, great. But we don't like the fixture you picked,
Right.
okay? So it's just, it's all about what you're saying, that, you know, TPZ should respect what we're saying, but in the end, would the TPZ ever say, oh, wow, they, you know, their design review board really didn't like this, so we're not going to approve this, even though you met all the regulations.
Yeah, well, it's happened in the
You know,
opposite way.
I know that's a crazy
Hardware
what if
store.
question. I don't know that it
I
would.
think
Yes,
they were trying to I think the
Let's
TPZ
put that one on hold because I can't answer it.
But that's part of the
The
whole.
reasons is the TPZ were trying to get them to change before they said no.
Right, and it depends on a couple things. One, if it's a site plan application only, I think the commission is a little bit more,
Constrained.
exactly, there's
More what?
Constrained.
Strength.
they don't have as much wiggle room to say, well, you know what, we don't like the light fixtures, so we're not gonna approve this. If it's a special permit application, which most things are in the center
More
district,
weight.
there's a lot more weight for them to say, you know what, DRB reviewed it. It doesn't fall into our guidelines that we have for the specific district, and therefore it doesn't meet our special permit criteria.
I agree.
So I think there is and of course, anybody can appeal anything, you know?
Yeah,
That's always
I
the
know.
risk.
I mean, someone could
but-
come in on a preliminary basis, you know, the very first meeting, we talk about all kinds of things, and we're hoping the building is located at that end of the site and the parking's over in the rear or so, you know, and then they don't listen to any of it and they come back and we're still not happy, and then, but they've met all the regulations.
Right.
You know, I guess we're kind of powerless then over somebody who's insistent on meeting regulations,
Yeah.
but not following design.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, from a standpoint of saying that a developer, an applicant would come in and start swinging their weight around, in my experience goes back a long time. The bigger the developer, the more they want to please you.
Yep.
They have a reputation to think about, they have people in the community they know. They may not like what you're saying, but they're gonna find an alternative to maybe make you happy, that they're happy with, whether that's saving money or not.
I think Popeyes was a good example.
Yeah,
of that.
the
Yes,
chicken place.
okay,
Yeah.
second thing is, you know, from the standpoint of looking at all applications equally, so they sue us. The town that I was on council got sued for $75 million, which got our attention. And you find out, when you really look into the judicial system, that one of the most important things that judges look at is the consistency of your opinions. Have you singled somebody else out because you didn't like what they were proposing in the town, nobody liked it, so you found a way to say no?
Hmm.
That's a problem. But when you look at the applications that come before you, if you're even-handed, fair, and you don't ask one applicant for an egregious amount of things in order to put a monkey wrench in the works, that's the kind of stuff they look at. It's the so-called arbitrary and capricious type thing. You know, you were out to get this guy and
Right.
you got him. We don't do that. So, you know, to say that that couldn't happen, sure it could.
No, it's very unlikely, but
But-
I'm
but-
just trying to,
Consistency
Can I
of how
ask
we
that
do business has a
table
lot to do
this
with it.
discussion because it's something that the staff will obviously kick around. We have other things on here that you probably want to talk about. We could be
Okay.
here all night, so.
I'm sorry,
Keep focused.
but I think it's a long-term kind of issue in just the relationship between us and TPZ.
Yes.
That's
Well,
what that is.
well, I brought it up first because I think that's very important.
Well,
Yeah.
they do what
It's
they do,
important
and we
that
do
they
what we
understand and
do.
appreciate what we're doing for them. And if there's an adversarial situation, it ain't gonna work. So I don't even get into that.
Right.
So, Mark, you had some things in the beginning you were going on about. You started with the
meeting.
required preliminary meeting, then you had some other things. you
Well,
wanted to-
we brought up the other one I had.
So you're all set.
I'm good.
Good. Michelle, did you have any more?
Where are we in the document that we're looking at? Are we looking at the procedures and guidelines?
Wherever you want to be.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you what I have here. There's some more language things, and what I'm gonna do, John, if you're interested, I'll just give you these
That'd be
from the
great.
standpoint of language. As long as you copy it and send one back to me, so when we come to a next meeting, I know what I said
Be
here.
happy to. I'll
Because I
save
don't
the
have-
original.
Okay, great, because I don't have my notes on my laptop. As a matter of fact, I have some references here with regard to conceptual review to be conducted by the planning director and consultant. And some other things that I have, preliminary design review, just some language, things that I have. Things that I find are missing are our ability to say that we reserve the right, and I think we can do this legally, that we reserve the right to research any information that we feel that we don't have with regard to design needs. In other words, if we want to look at, say, for example, ordinances that other towns are using to review, that we can do that. That we can have also a calendar presence, which we do not have now, which lends to our validity, and anybody who looks at the calendar from the standpoint of scheduling their application can see it, because we're not on there. And also, if we would be willing, and I would volunteer to do it, that we do an annual report, just a bullet of things that we have reviewed and things that we have accomplished, that we feel we have accomplished, because it shows that we are paying attention to our charge, as confused as it might be in
Oh,
some
in the
points,
town's
but
annual-
nonetheless.
That's
Yeah.
the town manager's office, right?
Then the other thing,
Office of Communication.
Communication.
Strategy.
yeah, one more thing is that if we have procedures and guidelines, we have to differentiate between what they are. If we have guidelines, then we have to say what they are, because we want to stay within the parameters of those guidelines. Let's see, then I go over to,
You mean list them and without, or just make reference to where they are in the
Yes.
regulars?
the citation.
Citation.
Okay, and then on the last page where we talk about, and Mark brought these things up, so with regard to architectural design to scale, including but not limited to, I also think it's very important, and the example that I will use is, what is the chicken restaurant over in,
Popeyes.
okay. I looked at that plan when you sent it, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out on that plan where that was gonna go. Literally on the
Oh, on the
site.
site, okay.
Yeah, okay, so what I'm saying is, when you have an architectural design, usually someplace in the plan set is a location plan, so it shows how it relates to something else, that you know where it is, a north indicator. And landscaping plan is not noted there, and I suggested it be a preliminary one, not a final one. And also, that we reserve the right to have the ability to recommend or require additional information as the design review board determine the application to be incomplete, if we think that there's something really missing. But hopefully you guys will have picked up on that anyway. But say, for example, they just decide not to do it, you have no control over that. So,
Right.
you know, we could point that out. Then, missing here, and you already brought this up, so missing is working days prior to a deadline of receipt of an application to design review board meeting agenda placement. The applicant has to really understand this, and it's sort of like hairy, but nonetheless, you know that. Number two, specification during meeting of the deadline to submit plan revisions in order to have the review at the next DRB meeting. In other words, don't be coming in here at 4 o'clock when we're still at home trying to get dinner on the table, and then we have to review your plan, because we're not gonna do that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say suggest 3 working days. If you would look at the revisions and say, yeah, but it's only 2 lines and it's not a lot, can we bring it to the table? We'd say,
Right.
sure,
Right,
do that. But if it's significant stuff, they can't just wait around on the limit and then inundate you with it and
Right.
bomb us with it.
right.
Okay, and then the third thing that's missing is, and I know we're going to correct this now that we have our star reporter here, is the minutes to the website on a time frame. So anybody who's interested in the application and couldn't participate in the meeting could look at it. So that's pretty much what I have. So I'm just going to give this to you.
Thank you.
Either burn it or,
No, we'll save it.
okay.
That architectural design listing, you could be explicit about, more explicit on exterior. That would be the place to be, because you could just have plans, so we don't need full.
I have
building
that term
plans.
exterior too, so we're going down the same road. Okay.
You have it some places. but-
Yeah.
You.
Well, I mean, in turn, I'll follow just with that part. I'm always concerned, as Michelle was saying, with context. And a lot of what we're saying our charge is to, you know, make sure that these projects are integrated into our town fabric, into the fabric of our community in this. And the focus isn't on, as far as I'm concerned, my focus isn't on the exact light fixture. It's more on the context.
Right.
And we haven't had too many applicants come in and say, okay, here's the big picture where, you know, and the wheres and whys of why our project fits in to the community, what its impact will be. You know, these big projects of Mr. Butler's come in as an isolated
Yeah,
piece
yeah.
on a corner here, a little spot over here, and yeah, it's right next to the flats and all of this, but there's no sort of big picture.
It's in a vacuum.
And so I'm talking about priorities in terms of big picture, little picture.
Mhm.
And if your filter can kind of work at that level, I think it brings to us, you know, a bigger understanding and puts in the mind of the developer and the applicant that that's what we're looking for.
Mhm.
Those are our focal points. That's our focal. And it talks about it here as in our chart, but I think people get tied up into the minutia of, you know, the color of the sign or the bend in the light fixture and that sort of thing.
And some of the reason I didn't repeat was I didn't want to be repetitive. But we can certainly put it in there.
Like the second Jerome apartment building. Wow, where is it in relation to the first one?
Right.
That's a huge issue, and they weren't thinking about that.
I swear they moved it closer to the sidewalk.
Because
Oh, I
they
do
weren't
too.
thinking about it. That's the
They did.
reason why.
So,
There's no room for trees anymore. We had trees along that street.
we did, yeah. So I don't have any
I think the way,
other comments.
I think the way we address something like that is we add something in here, compatibility surrounding uses and compatibility
It's sort
surrounding
of make-
architecture.
I think you can
Make them know what that
Relationship,
is.
too.
Right.
you know.
Right.
I think you can summarize that under the words urban design.
Yeah.
Which if you have an architect, they should know what that means. You know, we're not looking at how, you know, how wide is your clapboard.
Right.
You know, we're looking at the context, continuity, all those things that are urban design aspects. So you might throw that word in here.
Mhm.
I had a couple of comments in the first paragraph of the purpose and overview. And the purpose is to encourage an architectural design that is in harmony. Well, again, there's that word architectural. We're really not looking at architecture. We're looking at a development design that is in harmony. I don't want to get people thinking that we want to look at architectural. Because so everything you spell out on the second page is all really urban design kind of thing. I'm just throwing that out there. We don't have.
And you could take the word architectural right out.
Yeah, that too.
Encourage design.
That's exactly it. Fine.
Hear that?
Works for me.
And,
Works for me.
in the second paragraph, DRB reviews all proposals in the center district. You might add something like, our goal is to encourage development that is coherent, attractive, and functional, and visually attractive and functional within our town standards, our town, what's a bigger word for milieu? No, not that word. It's within our town. That's really what we're up to. I think the 5 items on the second page that's what it's all about. I think that's fine. Words like facade, when we talk about massing and streetscape, there's nothing here about facade proportions. I want to mention something like that, visual.
But that is in the guidelines.
Yeah, it is, but I mean,
There's scale,
but
there's scale.
they might just read this.
Well, that's-
You want to make sure it's in there. It's the short version,
Yeah, okay.
you know? And we have pedestrian accommodation, obviously that means vehicles and vehicle movement and pedestrian accommodation. We say nothing here about public space. Treatment of public space. Another element. Also, there's nothing that says who we are. We include a group of design professionals representing architecture, planning, land planning, urban design, civil engineering, to name a few. And we're here because we're residents, we have a sense of where our town is, what it wants to become, and we want to help you to develop.
Definitely.
There's,
But
I think in the definition of the makeup of our board, I think we're also supposed to have somebody, a layperson.
so, and others,
Um,
we did have a layperson. That's correct, you're right.
Yeah.
But, and others. But that's basically, they gotta know who they're coming to talk to.
Yeah.
And that would be helpful.
I think we put that right at the beginning.
Yeah, so they don't waste our time.
Yeah.
Because we know the language
It's an
and,
important consideration.
I think that was in something prior and I pulled it out just to keep it short, put it back in.
we had my
Really brief.
chance to comment on the TPZ, and I think we need to work on is that relationship. That's about all I had on here. So, anything else anybody has?
I think what we do now is between us, we take all this, put it together, put it back in, and for your December meeting, we have hopefully final drafts. And then what I would recommend is we take an official vote on it, put it into stone, essentially.
We'll send it out at 5 o'clock that day.
Masonry's not required.
Right.
what the proof is.
Yes.
Don't even say, just bring it to the
Yeah, we'll bring it to
table.
the table.
meeting.
We've
All
done
in
it, guys,
favor
here it
of approving this?
is. Just take it or leave it. No, we'll try and get it out, weeks in advance. We've got plenty of time to do it.
We do.
Good. All right.
Do you know, this brings up a question. How have we been operating as a planning department and a building division and all of this without some of these really basic questions of procedure and how it works? How have we been operating? Is it because it's in somebody's head, it's not written down anymore?
I worry that over the course of time, that's what's happened. As I'm sure you all are aware, there's been a lot of, until recently, until the past, 8 months or so, there's been a lot of, a lot of
Okay.
instability. And that's really what all of this is designed to fix.
Yeah,
Things like the timelines for applications, it really shouldn't be just an arbitrary, well, you have to have it in by, I don't know, this day. We have to have,
just to make you feel better, there are other boards and commissions that have asked these same questions and they fell on deaf ears. And you can understand anecdotally how people, especially in administration and people in boards and commissions, well, they know what they're doing, so they don't feel compelled to document it anywhere, except you're constantly having this turnover of people who come to the table with real disadvantages. And your applicants, that's another
I
matter.
mean, we're trying to, it can't happen overnight, but we're trying to get some real order
Yep.
to this place, which has not had real order for 2 or 3 years. And, it's not only with here, it's some of the other boards and commissions. Both in terms of, the processes, the information, and then on the back end. I mean, there's, we go looking for stuff and which is very frustrating. And so thank you. Trying to get all that in place and to make our job and your job a lot easier. And make the applicants, a lot more really formalized for the applicant. I mean, some of you probably be amazed how much business comes from there on a daily basis. It's just, we have, from a building perspective, we have as much volume as communities 2 and 3 times our size. I mean, we're doing dollar volumes in building permits that dwarf West Hartford, for example.
And
Which is
field.
Enfield.
Yeah.
Enfield,
Where's it going?
it's going into the budget, you know, and it's not, I'll tell you one thing, it's not coming directly to us. We're not getting any bodies,
Yeah.
you know, it's,
Well, think about it. When I was on the Economic Development Commission, I don't know if this statistic is still valid. Bloomfield had more industrial, commercial property ready to be developed than any other town in Hartford County. And so then we always say, well, how come nothing's happening? You know,
we have, I mean, just as,
so we have the resource.
we have more people working in town than live in town.
That is correct. They're commuters.
About 1,000.
Yeah,
Just
it's
do the
about
math.
1,400 now.
Wow,
One of the,
So it's an untapped
interesting.
resource.
one
We've got
of the
about
thought,
21 was it 21,700 was the number?
7 compared to like 20.
Yeah, 21,700 people working in Bloomfield every day.
In addition to the residents, or
No,
you're
that
saying
includes-
that is the,
That's the working population. And 20,000 people live in town.
oh, I thought our population was 22,000.
No, it's
No,
about
it's about
20.
20 and change.
20 and
The
change.
other surprise is the level of income.
we finished.
Very
up on this?
surprising.
We wanna get-
Sorry, David.
No, I just want to suggest, again, for those people who may feel that government regulations are too onerous. I think coming to the DRB could and should facilitate the process. By letting, and I think that's a word that might be incorporated somewhere in there, by virtue of our giving them a better idea of what they want, what we're looking for, saving them time and money and all that design and, all their stuff. And then being able to represent that to the TPC, again, that we're on the same page, hopefully. That's a way of promoting the town's ability to get something done, but get something done well.
Mhm.
And I think that's the best we can hope for.
I had one other thing I wanted to throw out. I know it's come up before. Is there any way, any thought among this group about expanding our
Yes,
sphere of influence?
we talked about that a lot.
I was gonna bring that up too.
Justin has the answer.
We've talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been things that have come up where we've even considered, you know, maybe we should run this by the DRB because it would be very helpful. You know, there's a couple in mind now that I know of. but
I was thinking of the one that was on the agenda the other night.
Which was that?
There's a,
proposal.
There's
about
an
Blue Hills Avenue.
age-restricted housing development going in, proposed, gonna be coming in for the old drive-in site up on Blue Hills Ave.
Where is this?
On the south end of Blue Hills Avenue, where
Next
the old
across from the
drive-in
cemetery.
theater used to be,
Oh, okay.
across from the cemetery.
Very appropriate.
Yes.
There's an age-restricted housing, and by a very, very responsible developer.
But it's in a gateway
It's in the
zone.
gateway
Well,
zone.
it's a gateway zone. It's also another major corridor. Those are
Right.
the places where we can be most effective. We don't go into neighborhoods.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's,
Yeah, but Blue Hills would be a
Blue
natural.
Hills would be natural.
We
So
talked
what
about
would
that.
that
We
take
talked about,
to expand our,
Planning and zoning would need to put it under that gateway district zoning section, because right now, all of these guidelines are solely within the BCD area.
but
But-
how did that occur and under whose, why are we
Because
limited?
that's the only way we could get in the door.
Well, no, but it
That's
wasn't.
why
No, I
it's-
hear what you're saying.
Yeah, how did it happen? I mean, I thought the mayor, said,
But there-
oh, we need a DRB and here's what I see and it got,
Again,
It
that's, I
happens.
think
I
the
don't understand how-
regulations were there.
The regulations always said that within certain zones in town, you had to have either a design consultant
right,
and then the DRB was considered as a
design.
That's what we're
consultant.
going after
Design
for the
consultant.
That was
center.
your foot in the door.
However, there is language in the ordinance that created this body that says how if there are other locations that could utilize it,
Correct.
Correct.
and do
Yes.
that. So,
Yes,
it's
yes.
open, the door's open.
It is.
yeah.
And I guess it's a function between US staff and the TPC you work for, as to how you determine which goes where.
And I think that in our I keep calling it an organizational meeting that we're gonna have with TPZ, in November. That's one of the things we want to talk about with them, you know, what they see this group as and how we can make it more, like you said, more influential.
And I
lack of
think
a
we
better
have
word.
one advocate there now, the new young fellow that came in, the architect.
Oh, Leon?
Yeah.
Well, and I would imagine Kevin as well.
The other thing that
I think
contributed to that,
Katie, who's an alternate, I think would be a big advocate.
Yeah, I'm sure. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's there. Now's the time to put it out there.
was directed at the council that approved the revisions to heirloom flats. And I think that raised the ire of a lot of people
That was, yeah,
about the fact that, well, who approved it, number one, and number two, where was the review?
that was the straw.
It just happened, you know? So you can't have that, not for important projects, you just can't have
Yeah,
that.
that was not a small change.
No,
Anything else that we, on these two items? Okay, so I guess the next meeting, then we'll wait to see what you put together, and
oh,
if you have any
I have one more thing.
lingering questions or,
If you'll give me my notes back,
No.
please.
That's it?
No, no, come on, come on. Okay, only because this will direct my work behind the scenes here. With regard to the bylaws, this is very quick. The two things that I asked you as a group, if you were in favor of addressing, were the requirements with regard to meeting cancellations. And Robert's Rules of Order has some strange regulations, but this is one that should take any confusion with regard to meeting cancellations. It pretty much says that DRB must empower a person, I'm thinking you, to cancel a regularly scheduled meeting. Notices of cancellation should reflect who is making the decision and how the board members are to be notified of the decision. Meetings are most frequently canceled due to such things as weather conditions, blah, blah, blah. If a rescheduled date is anticipated, it may also be communicated to the board membership at this time. The bylaws, once amended, will provide a vehicle by which the meeting may be canceled. If the bylaws are silent on cancellation, there's no way to cancel a meeting. So any cancellation that we've had up till now is illegal.
Aren't those things already in the
No.
town for other committees? I thought,
We have to have our own
I don't think
bylaws.
so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
because like our library building committee, I was told,
I think-
okay, we have to cancel, you can cancel up to a certain, any time up to something, somebody
those
told
are
me that,
state
something like that.
state enacted regulations, but we're talking about the rules by which you operate are your bylaws. So form of a meeting cancellation, the chair gives written or electronic notice of intent to cancel a meeting at least, and then you fill in how many days prior that you
48
want to
hours.
do that. You can determine it prior to the meeting date, and we'll also check it for compliance with state regs. The reason for the cancellation will be given. A vote of the board is required. An electronic email response may be utilized if allowed in the existing bylaws. So we should be looking at that to write it down. Okay.
So does everybody have bylaws? Every committee, commission?
Now,
I
wait a
don't
minute.
think so.
We got it. And then, design review board recusals, abstentions to recognize and document possible DRB member conflict of interest. Per Robert's rules, a member may only recuse themselves from participating in a discussion/vote if the bylaws of the organization specifically mention and allow or authorize recusal or an applicable law or regulation provides for it. Recusal is a legal term and means to withdraw from the decision-making process because of personal interest or unfairness. Abstaining simply means the board member is not voting. Doesn't mean anything else. A lot of people think it does. The point of a recusal is to remove a member's influence from the discussions. Taking part in a discussion is exerting an influence, but influence can also be exerted by mere presence while discussions are taking place. Recusal is more often required by public bodies. So the questions for discussion: how is the DRB currently addressing conflict of interest on voting issues? By employing a quote hybrid unquote of recusal, as far as Robert's rules is concerned, because you don't have to be formal about it, of stating a conflict, requesting recusal not addressed in DRB bylaws, and abstention, not voting nor removing oneself from a discussion. So the actions that can be taken are, it requires bylaws to begin with. And then if members see a need to recuse themselves from discussions and votes that pose conflicts of interest, the bylaws should reflect such circumstance. The bylaws should reflect the petitioning member's name, specific proposal before the DRB, and general reason for the recusal. The planning director as liaison to the DRB shall receive the request. I put that in there. And include the request to DRB members in advance of any relevant presentation to the DRB. The recusal request shall be noted in the agenda and the meeting record. Abstention from voting requires no action. And I can tell you, I got bit by a recusal form at one time in my career as a council person, because I went to a council meeting and found out that I had to recuse myself, and I didn't realize I had to until a person stood up in the presentation portion from AT&T, and I didn't know the applicant was AT&T, and my husband's a stockholder. So, you know,
I think those are valid things to think about.
Yes. So,
I'm-
you know, it's sort of like my question was, well, do you have to have so many shares of stock or so much value in order not to participate?
But the
And our
difference,
attorney says, doesn't matter, you're recused. So,
I think those are good points. I don't want to be the only board with bylaws, but also we're a board with no authority. We don't
But-
make decisions. So I don't think those necessarily apply to us
But yeah, I would be very surprised if that's not all covered already by
somewhere.
town,
Yeah.
because we have so many, I think one question to the town attorney or even to the town manager's office. And I bet you all that is in place already.
I can tell you it's not, and the reason I can tell you it's not, is we enacted both of these regulations in the EDC and they were nowhere to be found.
And I'm not sure they do exist, but.
So,
And A for building committees, because building committees are legislative.
it's a simple thing.
So maybe you just adopt Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, so
Let's do that.
then we have in the bylaws that I'm working with is mostly boilerplate. And there are 8 different categories, but nothing, you know, who's on there, what are the qualifications of the members, how can you be discharged, all that other junk. So that's that. If you want to do it, fine. If you don't want to do it, that's fine too. It's your choice.
Well, I think that's something we should probably look
Yeah.
into. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do some research and see.
We'll look
what we-
into it, we'll
yeah.
look into see whether,
Yeah,
what
something's
control.
gotta be in place already.
Yeah.
Covers.
Just do the other guidelines. as a-
Well, you can always
Do the stuff
ask
first,
legal
then do the
counsel
second
for
part.
opinion on it.
You gotta
But
keep working.
you don't want somebody to be looking at a matter that's before them that they are in a conflict about. You don't want to do that.
I think we have an ethics policy.
That,
For
we definitely use
volunteers.
ethics policy, right,
Yeah.
receiving gifts and
Right.
that's definitely in place.
So then, we'll do some research. We'll figure out what we have and what we need to put in
Okay.
place.
That's great.
Um,
And as a matter of fact, if you would come up with a document that could be pretty much interchangeably used for anybody who is interested in adopting it,
Right.
done.
Okay. I think we completed this item. Old business, I don't think we have any. This was old business. Unless you have any thoughts about, I guess it could come up in your staff reports, of any potential projects coming forward that you might anticipate.
What about the planned conservation and development?
I haven't heard anything about
So our
it. I'm on
consultants,
this.
Is that old business?
Yeah, it's old business.
our consultants are working on that. We expect to have some more public outreach sessions, probably in early December. It might be in January at this point. But they're hard at work on putting that together.
And David, you were involved with.
Initially, I had
Some-
one meeting.
There was one
It
meeting.
was on Zoom. These public meetings you're talking about, are they gonna be in person?
So we're actually working with the consultant. What we're hoping to do is a hybrid of in-person and virtual. That way, more people can attend. And the other option we've talked
I
about.
think
is
it's
doing-
important to have humans together, so they see that there's participation in this process, rather than on Zoom.
We've heard a lot of feedback that people don't like that because they're busy. They don't have time to go home, have
That's
dinner
because-
with the family, and
Zoom thing is driving me nuts.
Yeah.
I don't think you get what you're expecting out of it. To make everybody be able to sit home in their socks, so they don't have to come to the meeting.
But will this board have a chance to
absolutely.
comment?
Oh, our plan with
Anybody
that
can
is.
comment,
After it's
loud and
done.
clear.
Well.
No, our
At
plan
5
is.
o'clock in the- yeah, on the table.
Exactly.
Once we have the final draft, the plan is to route it to our this board,
Okay.
economic
Yeah.
development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're looking to get as much input as we can. So,
So we could put together our own report and a certain chair could do a presentation for us.
Sure. What do you mean?
Sir.
So what, what's the
is a-
time frame on that, Justin?
It
No
was,
idea.
it was supposed to be by the end of this year, calendar year. It's looking like it'll probably go into the next couple of months of next year.
Not the middle of next year? You think that far along?
I think we're
Looks like a lot of decisions have been made already.
I think there's gonna
That's
be a
the
big
case.
push in the next couple of months, so I think, end of January, middle of February could be finished.
Yeah.
Could be ready to distribute.
I think that's the better way to
Yeah.
phrase it.
The hardest aspect of this one should have to be the economic portion, because who the hell knows what the economics of office and retail
Right.
may be. And that's a big chunk of our landscape.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on the town center plan, we hope to be able to retain a consultant in the first quarter. We have to follow a process with the state. We've been awarded the grant, but we haven't signed the contract yet. Everything we do has to be reviewed by them.
You're going through this.
That's, yeah,
CIF. Then once we start, and our thought at the moment is it's for 250,000. And our present thinking is that we would we would use about 200,000 for the planning side. And potentially not just use one consultant, but use maybe at least two, one on the land use site plan conceptual and a second on economic development. We're not sure that there's one consultant that can do both as well as we would like them to do. We'd like one that's really good on land use and, know the physical side of things, and then someone on the economic incentives. And then save maybe $50,000 to seed, a Main Street planner type of thing, a town center individual who could begin the implementation.
Let me ask you this. You remember back in the 80s in Hartford, we created a downtown business zone one
Right,
with bonus FAR for developers that wanted to do more because it made economic sense. But in order to do more, they had to do something better. We know if that's going to be developed properly, they're going to have to do more in terms of square footage than what's there now. Give it to them, it's yours. Or you say, we'll give you this. If you pay attention to money, we'll give you another 100,000 square feet. You were there when that was enacted. I thought that was,
Yeah.
that was a good way of, let's make a deal.
right.
Give the municipality much more opportunity to get the public space improvements and the kinds of details that you wanted, because they're getting something more that they want.
Yeah.
And give that some thought. I think that should be, I don't know whether or not we're structured the same as Hartford was. In the state
Well,
structure,
we-
but
we-
you
we,
might have a better
A
feel.
lot of this may run through the EDC, quote, Development Authority now. It has a development agency power that may allow it to do that kind of, let's make a deal.
Good. Well, it's only have something there. It doesn't give away the store without getting something we want out of it.
No,
Of course, everyone
we're
would say,
the-
well, any development we're very happy with. Well, that's the way that's the way it's always been.
This one, we gotta make it right.
Yeah.
We're only gonna get one shot.
That's right.
Who will make the decision about who's chosen?
Who's chosen
For the consultants,
for the
Yes.
consultants? And there'll be a selection committee.
And who is that?
So it'll be he and I, it'll be the purchasing agent and
likely the town attorney.
likely the town attorney. It's fairly structured.
No outside people?
No,
Not good,
not allowed.
not good.
Talk
Who
to
says you're not allowed?
the town ordinances.
Well,
They
I'll tell
said
you
no.
what. If you would want to look at one reason why Bloomfield looks the way it looks, part of the responsibility lies there.
so we don't EDC people? No.
No.
Not on the selection
Not on the
committee,
selection committee. They would be absolutely reviewing, guiding the plan and everything. But,
I'll tell you, there's something wrong with that, big time.
We don't even select it.
Right.
It goes all through purchasing.
Right.
So.
Not, okay, then you know what? If somebody isn't looking into that, they ought to be.
Well, what characterizes a better applicant, a better economic forecaster or economic designer, planner, whatever? I don't know. I mean,
We've got some.
Yeah, I'm sure you go through all that, but
Some
I'm
fairly
sure the town
specific
attorney would be.
criteria- fairly specific criteria we have to follow,
Yeah.
but that's included in the criteria.
Mhm.
Yeah, the state has laid out some very, very stringent policies when it's the grant money of how we move forward with things like this.
Yeah, we're following, it's a combination of town but
If they were not sitting
we have to
in,
follow the
what
state
skin do they have to
purchasing
get out of the
requirements.
money?
They have to.
or selection of professionals.
Well,
Crazy rules.
Yeah, so
it's
once
a little bit
we,
beyond crazy.
they have to, before we can even publish our RFP, they have to approve it. Once we make a selection on our RFP, they have to sign off on it. So there's a lot that goes into it. We've been familiarizing ourselves with the rules.
And what is their interest in setting up who sits on the committee?
The state's interest?
Uh-huh.
Can't answer that question. Other than they want to protect the use of their money.
Right.
They want to make sure their money is used for the purpose of which we said it's going to be used for.
I don't know how that guarantees it, but okay.
Well, clearly the planning process is a mystery. It's not publicly aware, made aware, so. I guess.
Well, it's interesting.
Perhaps by design.
The CIF funds are while they fund planning activities, they primarily fund construction activities. So it's really a construction grant. And so you're trying to, put a round circle in a square hole.
Plus the fact you're gonna have perhaps a planning document that's gonna be ready for printing before they're finished with their design plan, right? How's that gonna work? The downtown study. Is it dovetail time-wise with the plan or not? Doesn't sound like it.
So what is the total cost approval for
Wait.
these two projects?
Wait, we had a question on.
Too many questions at once.
Yeah,
I'm getting
yeah.
distracted here.
Yeah, you said that the planning is likely to be wrapped up in 2 months. Well, I don't see these guys doing a study for the mall in 2 months.
So the POCD you were talking about.
POCD.
Yeah, no, this is two different things, and it's not just for the mall. It's the entire TIF district for the town center area. We're being very careful about saying that it's not just for the mall for various legal reasons.
Basically, it's taking the POCD and really taking a section of town and boring down.
But is it going to be dovetailed with the presentation of the part of the POCD, or is that gonna be an addendum?
It will essentially be an addendum, an appendix to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll follow.
All right, as long as-
You'll be about a year behind, David.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that'll be a big empty part of the plan, okay.
And who, in this planning group, this $250,000 thing, who's running that after the selection's made?
EDC is
EDC.
the official,
Okay, so they.
I should
these-
say the DA as their development agency
Yeah.
hat. Yeah,
All right, so these planners answer to the development agency.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the
Through us.
official,
Who's the EDC?
Yeah, but through us,
Okay,
Yeah.
we staff.
we're the staff
We're the
liaisons.
staff
and then,
liaison.
okay.
So,
Okay.
And,
Michelle, you-
and will there be any involvement of this board in
Yes.
that?
Yes,
And how do you see that happening?
we'll just funnel it to you.
twofold,
Every
actually.
time.
When?
When we
I
have
don't know
something to
that-
show you.
Well, I think,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm just curious.
we're talking about the plan that they come up with before it's approved by the EDC.
Right, so
Yes, that's what we want to get in.
twofold with this. One is that there's going to be a group of people that'll be involved, and that's gonna have members of TPC, EDC, this board, blanking on the term. General people in town,
You know,
Residents.
Chamber of Commerce, maybe,
yeah, but
you know,
at large, at large.
property owner,
Um,
businessman.
So that's one avenue, and then the other avenue is we'll be bringing this to you with staff updates and, asking for your input on different things as we move along.
But you'll have an actual representation on lay group following it. If you choose.
Someone needs to volunteer for it, but you don't need to decide right now.
Anything else? Okay, so that's public comment. I assume there's still nobody out there. There was a commission update, so a couple points. You're gonna be leaving,
Away.
you'll be as of
December
December
1.
1, so you're back in March. The other thing is, are we,
You can see my face on the screen.
oh, that's true, but that's not the same. Are we destined for election of officers in January? Or is it-
Your next meeting.
Okay,
Approval of meeting dates, all that kind of
all of that stuff.
business meeting, yeah.
Anything else like that? Do we have to? No. Okay. Fine, me, everybody,
Excuse me, is it okay if I recorded it? Because I want to start on it tonight. Is that okay?
record. What?
This meeting. I recorded
Oh, you
it
mean
because
type it
I'd
up.
like to,
Oh.
yeah, start tonight.
Isn't it also being recorded as a public
Yeah,
meeting?
It is.
yeah.
So it's both.
I'm starting tonight because I want to have it into you on time.
Right, he's your boss, not me.
That's perfectly okay.
It's Because I've been recording it because I want to start on it tonight, so I can have it
Okay,
in on time.
I think we're ready to adjourn. If anybody, no final thoughts, so.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Good, good work.